Just wanted to say a warm welcome this evening. Lots of experienced people on here, so the plan tonight is not to teach you to suck eggs, really, but it was just a chance to kind of get together ahead of, well, I guess is it Super League finals? It's not just a Super League round, isn't it? So
third fixture day, so Cassandra probably knows the answer to that better than me.
No, I know nothing.
Well, either way, we've got a bunch of our national finals coming up at the end of the day, haven't we? So we thought it would just be a good chance to get together, just to spend a little bit of time together, a bit of a refresher, maybe a little bit of a download of some of the stuff we've been noticing on the international circuit as well. We could maybe share a few bits of information with you, but not wanting to spend, go on about it too much. But I think we would all just love to send our love to Anne this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you in the flesh very soon. And yeah, we're all sending our love this evening. Okay, let's get cracking. Ooh. So I think that it was probably called a rules refresher in the emails. That's what's been talked about. But probably the better description would be a referee refresher. I think that would be a more accurate way of talking about what we're going to go through this evening, and just going to touch really on four areas: procedures, not rules, but we will talk about a few specific things, and just to remind people really of the spirit of the game and our mindset as referees as we head into these finals. So yes, I'm going to be focusing mainly on Heathcote because that's the one I'm the head referee for, but Kaz, please feel free to chip in about Super League and how there's a difference in the way that I'm talking about things as to how you want people to be set up for it. But like I say, I've aimed this really very much with the end of the season in mind, but with obviously a particular focus on this weekend and Saturday as well. So this might take 20 minutes, might take 40 minutes, might take an hour. It's kind of up to you a little bit to a certain extent, but given the experience that we have on the call, I think that I don't want to teach you to suck eggs this evening. So I guess really that one of the key messages to get across is rules are important. Absolutely, rules are important. However, it's not that be all and end all, but please make sure that you do have downloaded and access and read over the next 48 hours the new version of the international rules, especially section 14, so chapters 14. That's really where the violations are. So please do take the time to just refresh yourselves on section 50. But also just wanted to point out, if you've not been on the World Boccia website of late, and don't worry, I'm not going to arrest you if you haven't, but actually in the rules section there is a little Q&A element of some questions that have been posed over the last 12 months, mainly from players and coaches, but just give a little bit of clarification on a few things. So I think there's about 10 or 15 questions that are on there. So yeah, if you kind of think, oh well, I know the rules inside out, maybe just have a look at some of those questions. And what's quite nice about them is that it asks the question, but you have to press the little plus sign to get the answer. So it's a nice little warm-up to get your brain back in the mood, get ready for this weekend to go and look at the questions that are there and then think, oh, what would my answer be? And then to be able to see what the official response is. So all you would need to do in order to find that is just type World Boccia rules in, and you can find the document that's downloaded, the 2.1, but also next to it is something called the Q&A. So just have a look, just to get your mind ready for this weekend. But really, I think one of the things that I wanted to stress really is procedures, not rules. So rules are important, but so are procedures. And I think it's become more and more apparent as we've become more and more experienced as a bunch of referees, as a cohort of referees, that yes, we can know the rules, but often actually the difference is how we implement the rules. And I think that's just one of the key things that we've talked about at Boccia England. Well, probably for a long time, 5 or 6 years, we've really been talking about how we do things rather than just the kind of what we do or what we know. Now, we do now have an official manual, which has just been updated for March 23, which actually does go through the international referee procedures. And I don't expect you to know these inside out, but it would just be really to kind of point you in that direction. Yes, refresh the rules. Yes, go and have a look at that Q&As. But definitely, especially if you've never done it before, scan your eyes over the procedures manual. And yet some of it's relevant more so for international, and yet some of it's relevant for teams and pairs, and maybe not for Heathcote or our Super League teams. But I think that it really gets the basics for this weekend and for the B Cup finals as well. It'll be really something to take the time to look at. I'm going to pick on a couple of these things to kind of run through this evening. But really, it's just wanted to really focus that mind. Yes, we've got 48 hours. Know the rules, refresh the rules, have a look at that Q&A thing to give yourself a little test or just see what some of the questions are coming up. But absolutely, have a look at some of the procedures. We all know how to measure, I'm sure. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is measuring. But actually, did you know that in the international procedures, there's a particular sequence that you could be doing, and how to really, really sharpen up your measuring? Well, have a look in that document. If you're doing the level 3 in a few weeks' time, then we will be picking through the manual and implementing it. But maybe you've already done the level 3. Maybe you are an international referee on this call. Please take the time just to have a look, refresh your mind. And remember, yes, we can know all of the rules in the world, but actually how we implement them is so important to people's experiences as we go through this competition, in particular with the Heathcote, but also it's true of the following competitions too. So we do have a couple of different areas that we have over the weekend. So we will have a volunteers room where I've said spectate from the stands. I'm not sure exactly if we're going to have a dedicated area, but I think you should be able to access the stands very, very easily, and they're above the court, so you get a really good viewing point. So if you want to watch some games, I'm sure you'll be able to do that. I put on there being professionally courteous, and I think this is just something I wanted to touch on, especially now we're hitting finals season. And I think whilst one of the reasons we give a dedicated volunteers room is that's not just where we hide all the snacks, although that is true. But it's actually a place for us to kind of get a little bit of breathing space, have a little bit of time away from the players. Actually, it is important that yes, we know people, we may even be related to them, but actually we're here as referees this weekend. And I think we had Joel a little bit earlier talking about Kirsty, and that was really nice and honest of him. And I think Natalie's response was absolutely the right response. For those of you that joined Joel, asked the question or just wanted to raise the transparency that Kirsty's one of his coaches. And I think Natalie's response was, thank you for raising that. That's really nice. Probably a lot of us are in a very similar situation where we've got multiple hats and multiple roles. But just remember, this weekend, we are referees. And for B Cup, we are referees. So when I talk about being professionally courteous, that doesn't mean that we snub people that say hello or stick out a hand to shake it. Absolutely. Be lovely. Say hello. But then move on. You know, we back in the day, there's a Canadian referee called Leslie Haliki, and when I started international refereeing, she was top dog. She was excellent. She was one of the top dogs. She was one of the most scariest women I think I've ever met in my life. Like, man, she was small, but she was so powerful, and she used to scare the life out of me. And we used to have to sign contracts before every competition to say about how we were going to proceed, like behave, and how we were going to interact. And I always remember that her rule of thumb was have a one sentence conversation. Hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine, really good. Have a great competition and move on. And it was that one sentence conversation. I remember I'd been with the England team for a number of years, just as I think I was a BC1 assistant, or I was just, getting the lunches. I was just doing anything they wanted me to do. And it was hard because I remember that first competition, I'd spent my previous years with this England team. This is before GB Watcher was around even. I knew these people so well. I delivered personal care, all of these different things. And yeah, I had to have one sentence conversation. But I just remember the after the competition, just being able to go around and give the teammates the biggest hugs that I could, and to really kind of enjoy in their success after the competition was finished. So I just really want to remind people, it's not to say, sorry, head referee says I can't speak to you. Absolutely not. Be courteous, be lovely, shake the hands, have those positive conversations with them, but then do move on. Go to spectate in the stands with the other referees, or go to the volunteers room to go and relax, rather than spending time talking with others. So just wanted to kind of raise that at this point. So a few rules that I just want to highlight, and I've got three. Obviously there's a ton of rules, and we could go through them line by line, but that's not really how we want to spend our Thursday evening. I just really wanted to touch on three rules in particular, and the first one's got a couple of impacts that we've seen in particular on the international circuit over the last few weeks. We had our first international of the season, of this calendar year, in end of March in Zagreb in Croatia, and I know Steve was there. Who else was there? Jan was there too. So we've got some people that got that first-hand experience. But some of the things that kind of cropped up really was this 1 minute between ends, which isn't new. It's been around for a little while now. But I don't know, it felt like it was been causing a bit more bother than it ever really has done before. So I don't know quite what it is, but there's maybe a couple of things that we've been highlighting. So now players can have their coach assistants, individual players can have their coaches on the end of court, which is great for us as referees, because they can go and pick up the balls, and that just makes our life easier as a referee. However, we did find in Zagreb in particular, and I know in other competitions too, they're just getting a little bit tardy in getting back to their seats. That 1 minute suddenly just taking a little bit longer. So that's one thing I really would love you to stress to them, if they do have coaches there with them, that they need to be back sat at the end of court in order to, by the time that 1 minute comes to an end. Now, look, if they're stepping over the line and that 1 minute comes to an end, I'm not expecting you to whip out the yellow card. When there's a slide will come to later. We're not here to catch people out, regardless of whether it's a Heathcote Cup or a BE Cup. We're not there to catch people out. However, it might be something that we really want to remind people before the game, and we'll talk about call-up room and how that's going to work or not work in a couple of slides' time. But coach assistants. And I would just say, from experience of Heathcote Cup, we get some really lovely and willing people who are often on the sidelines, rather than being an official coach assistant, who then want to come and collect the balls, and they walk on to help you out and things. It's often because they're probably doing lots of courts all at the same time. But if they're collecting the balls between the ends, they need to be sat at the end of court. They need to be there for the whole game. They need to be a proper coach assistant, not just a really helpful someone on the sidelines. So just make sure that you know who the coach assistant is, if they have one or not. And if they haven't, obviously you'll need to collect the balls for them as well. And balls too. We've had a few issues with this rule the last couple of competitions. At the start of each end and at the start of the game, the balls need to be in their box or on their chair. So on their person or in their box at the start of each end. If they're not, if they're outside the box, then they would end up being made dead balls. Again, we're not trying to catch people out, but it is the coach's responsibility to get them to the right person. Obviously, if we're collecting the balls ourselves, we need to make sure as referees, we're putting the balls in the player's box or giving it to the player in order for them to put in their, on their ball tray or in their ball carrier. So just make sure that when we're collecting balls or the balls are being collected, that at the start of each end, they are in the player's box or in their ball tray. That's something that's cropped up a little bit over the last few weeks. Just a reminder about the out of the way rule. This is something which it kind of snuck in a little bit under the radar because we were kind of doing it with COVID, weren't we? We were doing that whole moving back and forwards thing. But actually, even though we're on, I've forgotten what the phrase is, level 5 of the return to bocce COVID pathway, which basically means return to full competition, that rule actually is a proper rule. It's not just a COVID rule. We expect players to move back outside of their box, out of the way, and any equipment that they have, which would be in the way of the opposition, must be moved out of the way too. And if that's something that you think is causing a particular concern, again, we're not there to catch them out. But if it's something's being persistent and consistent, then a yellow card would be the violation there. I think the final one really was just to double check aeroplane modes. And I think especially when we're thinking about Heathcote Cup, these competitions, I think will actually have more likely to have more violations at a competition like this than we would at the World Championships finals, because these players aren't as experienced as international players. And it's one of those kind of ironic things, really, that at the more local the competition, the more chance for mistakes. But yet actually, we don't necessarily have the most experienced referees there. Here, we're going to have a mix of players that maybe aren't the most experienced, but obviously looking at this call tonight, we've got a ton of experience. Please just check if they're using a tablet or they have their phone or they've got their music or their watch or whatever it might be that they've got, that they're in aeroplane mode and that they're not able to send and receive messages see as we go through the game. So yes, there's a ton of rules that we could go through, but I just really wanted to highlight those 3 because they've certainly come up a lot more on the international circuit. Okay. Okay, so starting a game, there's no call room for Heathcote. Kaz, I'm not sure what the situation is for you, so feel free to tell me otherwise. But for Heathcote, there's no call room. You're meeting the players on court. There is still a schedule, so they will still be announced and there will still be a schedule. So you won't have to go and find them. They should be there. There's not going to be a warm-up. So when you're there, you're going to go and stand on the cross, and that'll be the point when Richard Mann will be able to, who's announcing, will be able to see that everyone's in position. We'll give the thumbs up and we'll get the games underway. I guess on one level, that's just a quick information. I could move on from slides and just get on to the next slide. But actually, I just want to dwell on this just for a moment, because we all know, and I think the more experience you get as a referee, the more you realize how important the call room is. And, when you get the call room right, it really, really helps you as a referee. So we're going to be going to a competition where we've got potentially inexperienced players without a warm-up and no call room. There's a real chance for us to make a few mistakes or to make a few errors. Now, that doesn't mean we need to go through the full call room procedures on the court, but please do talk to them about how they communicate, especially BC3s. Find out exactly how they communicate, what their procedures are, what are the kind of things that they need to do. Still do some of those things. Check the ramps that they're not touching the floor on the court. So just make sure that even though there isn't a call room, that we're still asking those questions. We're still checking about their routines, and that we're not just, okay, next game, let's get it on. Because actually, Remember, these players are not as experienced as others. So take the time, just 2 minutes. It only takes 2 minutes to introduce yourself, check you got the players, check the assistants about their communications and their routines. And it'll really, really help make those games go a little bit smoother. So yes, there's no official call room. We're meeting the players on court, but we can still ask those call room kind of questions on the court. There's no warm up, so go and stand on the cross, and we'll get those games started as soon as everyone's in position. Kaz, do you want to just chirp up there if there's anything different for Sunday?
No, Sunday would be exactly the same. I think it's only 4 courts. So it will be, the players will meet on court. Teams will, you do the coin toss, exactly the same. And the formalities, as you say, BC3s, just check the ramps on court and check that there is the right number of balls on court. That's the other thing, because you don't normally have time to check that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. For B Cup finals, there will be call room. So don't need to worry about that for that competition. We'll have a call room underway for the finals. So 2 things I really, really want to focus on. And again, this is why I talked about a referee's refresher rather than a rules refresher. Just like the call room, which I've talked about, if you get the call room right, the chances are you're going to have a great game. If you get your positioning right, the chances are you're going to have a great game. And if you can measure well, the chances are you're going to have a great game. If you can do all 3, then we're going to have a great weekend. Like, it's as simple as that. But especially, I think, for Heathcote, we can absolutely rattle through games, can't we? Especially those 6s and 8s. Man, they're quick. And sometimes they're quicker than us. And that's just really, really remembering still to get those basics absolutely right. So I've just got a few photos of different people in different positions. And I guess I've got here an example of what I would love to see. You know, I would love to be able to look out, and I'm sure Steve will be the same, to look out. I should have said, Steve, you're assistant head referee. I hope you knew that. But everyone, we've got Steve as well. Sorry, Steve, I should have said that at the top. But this is what we want to see when we look out and look at the courts, whether it's a BC8 game or whether it's a BC3 final. Like, this is the kind of position that we want to look. A stride and a reach, that's the thing that we've said for years, to be able to intercept the ball. Yes, on the picture, we've got a pairs game. But again, I wanted to put that in so Kaz didn't feel too lonely for Sunday. But we need to be within a very easy reach of the line of the jack ball. But it's also very easy just to step a little bit too far away. And you might think, look, we've got everything under control. But if there was to be one issue here, our referee is not going to make that. Even if Steve is bang on and is absolutely going to nail that liner call absolutely brilliantly, I would suggest that the referee is not going to make that interception. So please make sure that you're a stride and a reach. Another example here, just quite far down away from the jack. Remember, all we need to be is make sure that we're out of the line of the jack ball. We're not trying to be out of the eyesight of the player, it's just out of the line of the jack ball. So I would probably suggest in this position, I would probably like her to be stood maybe just at the top of the Z. Somewhere like that would be ideal in this kind of situation, because very, very easy to intercept that ball. Very, very, if you're stood very, very still, you're not going to have an issue in kind of being a distraction to the players. So just remember that positioning and measuring. Look, we're maybe not as young as we used to be. And I'm not always expecting you to be in this perfect position that our Maria Spanish referee is. But I guess what I'm really trying to suggest here is that stability. Really make sure that we're as stable as possible in order to get in the right position when we're measuring. And please, please don't reach around when we're doing a measure. And we saw this. Jan and Steve will tell you the amount of referee briefings that I did in Zagreb around the second measure. So we do this perfect measure. Maria does this perfect measure, and then would, not her specifically, but then many would then reach around, and that second measure just isn't the same quality as that first measure. Just make sure that we're doing a great first measure, we're then getting up and moving around and getting in the same great position for that second measure. If we do that, we're stood in the right position, we've asked the right questions, and we know what the rules and the procedures are, then we're going to have a really, really great day. But all of these things, I think, sometimes can get a bit loose. And I think probably get more loose at the Heathcote Cup than maybe the BE Cup or Super League. So just really wanted to call those out. We're going to be flying through games. Please just make sure that positioning and measuring quality is still top notch. And the last couple of things I just wanted to speak on really was just a reminder about the spirit of the game. I think especially at the Heathcote Cup in particular, and I've talked about this, not trying to catch people out a few times, but I do genuinely mean it. We're there to help players and support them, not catch them out. That doesn't mean that if their foot's on the line, we tell them, oh, your foot's on the line, there'll be a violation, because that's actually not fair to the opposition. But what I'm trying to say is, if that coach is a stride from sitting down and that 1 minute ends, don't get the yellow card out. You don't need to get the yellow card out. Have a quiet word and just say, look, just be a little bit quicker, please. Just make sure that you sat down by the end of that, by the time that 1 minute comes to an end. So help them with that. But that doesn't mean, like I say, if someone's got their wheel on the line or their foot on the line, that we go and tell them so they don't have a violation, because that's not very fair on the opposition either. Got to try and get that balance. There's no hard and fast rules there as to how you would do that. But I think that's really, as a referee, that's part of the art of being a good referee, is to be able to interpret situations to make sure that it's fair, because that's what we're there to do as referees, but that we're not trying to catch people out too. And it's just remembering, especially for Heathcote, we want to welcome people back to boccia. And yes, we've already said, look, we're at level 5, we're a normal competition. But actually, people may well have so far only played in a very small competition. I was at the Northeast Championships, and it was pretty small in numbers. It wasn't loads of people there. And suddenly they're going to be in an environment with 100 people plus. And we've just got to still make sure that we're welcoming people back to boccia, creating that safe environment. People have the confidence to compete at their best. That's part of what we're there to do as a referee. And finally, just on mindset, there's no slide in here on this. It's just reminding people really about what we're there to do as referees. That culmination of being professionally courteous, absolutely. Be professionally courteous, say hello, be nice, but then move on, because we're there to be as a referee. But we're not there to be a dictator. We're not there to catch people out. So it's just striking that balance, isn't it? I think particularly for the Heathcote Cup, but I think also for other competitions too. We're there and we're representing Boccia England, we're representing the sport. And just to have that mindset of how we are going to perform, how we're going to act, and that idea of really, we want to be the forgotten ones on the court. We want to not be remembered. That's probably a good sign of a good referee. Is who was it on court 3 as referee? Oh, I can't remember. Great. Whoever court 3 was, gold star, because that's if the players can't remember who refereed them, then that's a good sign as far as I'm concerned. Like I say, we've got incredibly experienced referees on this call. And so I'm not here to go and spend an hour and go through things line by line. I don't need to. I just wanted to give a little refresher as we head into these final season about how we do things and our mindset around how we do things. If there's any questions, then please feel free to chirp up. Otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you at 8:45 on Saturday morning.
Richard, I'll just say one thing when you were on about the procedures manual. There is a contradiction in the procedures manual with tie breaks, different to the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the reality is that we won't be coming up against that rule, so therefore I didn't mention it. So, for example, at the managers' meeting in Zagreb, I did raise that as an issue there and said that if there is a conflict of between the manual, the procedures and the rules, we will always be siding with the rules.
Can I just say, well done, you've spotted the not so deliberate mistake, but yes, it has been brought to the attention of the referee committee that yes, there are some, even though we've updated the procedures, that they could be even better, and we are looking into that. But thank you for pointing that out. But as Richard said, it's the rules that you look at first.
Yeah, it's just that you steered people towards to have a look at them. And now you're sort of raising a bit of confusion, maybe, but so it's in hands. It's in hands.
Dan, I can see you put a question in the chat. If the 1 minute is up, if you want to crack on, then you can do. But I would suggest that 1 minute is as much for you as it is for the players, and it's a long day and a long weekend if you're there for both days. So I would also suggest that by the time you actually tell them, "Are you ready?" just use the minute up. We're not in a race, we're not in a rush, we are scheduled throughout the day. So my recommendation would be just let the minute play out. And I think especially for BC8s who maybe throw 6 balls in 1 minute, it's a good way of just managing the pace of the game a little bit for you as a referee. By you finishing super early, it won't affect what time we get our tea. All right. Well, if there is anything, or if you've got any questions in the meantime, do give me a shout, because I could be able to include them on the briefing on Saturday morning. Really look forward to seeing you all. Good luck for Sunday, Kaz.
Thank you.